How can we get ready for death? The ability to prepare for one's own death may be conceivable, but it is more difficult to do so when it comes to the deaths of our loved ones. Is it preferable to embrace death and give it the respect it deserves rather than to reject it, battle against it, or oppose it? A fantastic illustration of the effects of defying death is the Star Wars character Darth Vader. Understanding the nature of Darth Vader is the subject of this video. Through Darth Vader, we are shown the risks of rejecting the idea of death. Darth Vader's past holds a significant place in his philosophy. Therefore, we need to examine the childhood and youth of this character, namely the time when he was Anakin. Anakin is a highly talented and intelligent child who lives with his mother. Recognizing this, the leaders of the light side quickly put Anakin through various tests, realizing that this child is truly exceptional and superior. However, despite Anakin's magnificent abilities, he harbors a growing fear within himself, particularly a fear of death. This fear is especially pronounced when it comes to the death of his most beloved person, his mother. Growing up without a father and being deeply attached to his mother, Anakin's sensitivity towards the possibility of his mother's death catches the attention of the light side. Despite receiving advice from those around him to overcome this fear, Anakin struggles to apply these suggestions to his life. Even as he grows older, the idea of his mother's death continues to haunt him and invade his dreams. So, why can't Anakin free himself from this fear? Let's analyze this problem. How does a person overcome the fear of death? Anakin's strong denial of death and his resistance to it actually stem from a motivation that applies to all of us. Much like Anakin, we all struggle with the concept of death. Every individual fears the awareness that they and their loved ones will eventually die, leading them to develop various defense mechanisms against this fear. This struggle with death has been something we've been doing since the beginning of our existence. For instance, centuries ago, alchemists attempted to discover immortality, and even in the act of creating art, artists find motivation in the idea that their works will continue to live on after they themselves have passed away, capturing a sense of partial immortality. Arguably, one of the most common defense mechanisms we've developed against death is religion. Religions present concepts like an afterlife, heaven, and hell, which provide the idea that death is not the end and ease our minds in the face of death's daunting nature. As for Anakin, we can see that in addition to fearing the death of his loved ones, he also desires to control death. However, Anakin fails to find a defense mechanism that would allow him to accept death. Consequently, he attempts to control death on his own, but the Star Wars universe will painfully show Anakin that death is not something that can be controlled. One day, Anakin learns that his mother has been abducted by a gang. Without hesitation, he heads to the camp where the gang is located. Upon arrival, he finds his mother tortured and seriously injured. Shortly thereafter, his mother dies in his arms. We can easily say that this death will profoundly affect Anakin and even change him. His greatest fear, nurtured since childhood, has come true. So, how will Anakin, who realizes he cannot control the deaths of his loved ones, proceed from here? A person who struggles with death and cannot overcome it, who realizes that they cannot control their own death or the deaths of their loved ones, might resort to violence as a last resort. This is exactly what happens within Anakin as well. By violence, I mean primarily the act of killing other individuals. Taking the lives of others can provide the perpetrator with a sense of control over death and the grief within them, even a feeling of overcoming it. Especially for someone who has suffered greatly due to death, killing others might seem like a way to take a sort of revenge against death itself. Anakin follows this pattern. These ideas align directly with Anakin's behavior. His inclination toward violence intensifies after his mother's death. However, worse still, even after his mother's death, Anakin remains unable to free himself from the fear of losing his loved ones. In fact, this fear only grows stronger. Now, he fears the death of his wife. Yoda had warned Anakin from the start. Having been alone with his fear for a long time, Anakin eventually becomes consumed by it. Failing to find answers to his death-related dilemma on the light side, Anakin starts to focus on the dark side's views on death. In a meeting with his leader Palpatine, Anakin is told a legend. According to this legend, a long time ago, someone on the dark side managed to save their loved ones from death. Anakin doesn't even question the authenticity of this tale as narrated by Palpatine. The idea of saving his loved ones from death excites him. However, achieving this comes with a price. Palpatine emphasizes that only someone on the dark side can save their loved ones from death, as described in the legend. Following this revelation, Anakin erases his past and decides to embrace the dark side. His journey to becoming Darth Vader begins. During this process, he betrays the light side, battles his mentors, and even reaches a point where he would consider killing children. However, he still cannot save his wife from death. As evident, following the path of the dark side not only fails to conquer death, but also worsens things, as seen in Anakin's tragic transformation. It's clear that the dark side's perspective on death is fundamentally flawed. So, how does the light side approach death? Now, we can analyze the approach of the light side. Generally, when we examine individuals who have overcome the fear of death and come to accept it, we can say that these individuals have dedicated themselves to a higher ideal. This higher ideal could be religion for some, or leaving behind a legacy of achievements for others. For the light side, however, this ideal is their belief in the mysterious force known as the Force in the Star Wars universe. This is because the concept of the Force in the Star Wars universe is based on balance. Just as the light side is balanced with the dark side, life is balanced with the concept of death. Thus, the light side, which deeply respects the concept of the Force, also approaches death with respect as a part of it. Looking at the sides in the Star Wars universe, while the dark side is characterized by a constant desire to control and even hatred towards the concept of death, the light side is marked by acceptance and submission towards death. For instance, Obi-Wan doesn't even defend himself properly in his fight against Darth Vader. He even stops using his lightsaber and doesn't respond to Darth Vader's final move. Yoda, on the other hand, surrenders to his own death and departs in a way that could be considered peaceful. In these instances, the characters aren't willingly throwing themselves into death's embrace, but when they sense the inevitability of death, they don't shy away from surrendering to it. Obi-Wan knows that winning the lightsaber duel against Darth Vader is not possible. Therefore, he understands that his time has come to an end. Yoda, on the other hand, has realized that he is growing older and that his body has become weak. A truth that those on the light side have prioritized, a truth that Darth Vader stubbornly refuses to accept, is that death is not something to be resisted. Darth Vader is a truly tragic villain. Despite having the potential to do great good, his fears allow him to be consumed by the dark side, making him one of the greatest embodiments of evil due to his choices. Even though he eventually learns by the end of his story that death cannot be denied and surrenders to death like those on the light side, he has caused a lot of pain to many individuals and made the world a worse place until that point. I'm curious about your thoughts on Darth Vader. Don't forget to share your comments. Take care of yourselves until the next video.